So welcome to the Leadership Exchange, and today I am delighted to be joined by Annette Kumlien from Munters. Munters is an industrial engineering organisation in the HVAC space based in Stockholm in Sweden, and Annette is the GVP and CFO with oversight of finance, strategy, investor relations and IT. So a big old job. Thanks for joining, Annette. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
So, Annette, here we are heading into the end of 2020. We're in mid-November at the moment having this conversation. And looking back on the year, I mean, you've been enrolled just over a year yourself. So 2020 has represented a big chunk since you joined this organisation. So during this time, over this year, what's it meant for you as an organisation? What's this time meant for Munters?
I think, when this first happened sometime mid-March, when everything kind of like came to a halt, then the question became about how do we manage the company really to make sure that we drive the business forward. And we had just launched a new strategy, so there was a lot of new activities. And then in a situation where we don't really know where the market is heading. So, but it was like all hands on deck in a way. So everybody threw themselves into making sure that we did the best we could under this type of situation. So I think in the beginning it was like you got the energy of actually trying to fix it and trying to move forward, rather than maybe that you thought about yourself personally, although that came not too shortly after that also. But given the tools that we got in, that we have like Zoom or Teams, those actually has proven quite good to be able to run things remotely and still keep in contact remotely. But I think part of it is obviously that we ourselves new in dealing with these type of instruments, because we are so used to the physical meeting, and obviously the meeting over the coffee machine, those meetings doesn't take place any longer. So that type of social contact is being missed. But I would say that in the beginning, we managed quite well to get through with it. And this organization was also used a little bit to actually not be working from an office space 100% totally. So with that, I think we had a head start actually coming in and managing the situation. But again, yes, the social contact, I think people today, particularly when you got into this type of second wave that everybody's talking about, people are starting to feel it from a pure, you don't have the physical contact in the same way as we had before, and people are starting to missing it. If you look at how we have been traveling and how much time we maybe have wasted sitting on airplanes, or even if you look into when you're living in a big city, commuting maybe takes 2 hours of your daily life. I think people have also sort of found a way that they actually gain some extra time. You don't waste that commuting time that maybe we did in the beginning. So that comes as a positive side effect of it. But now I think it's about how do we manage the leadership when you're sitting remotely, because it's becoming even more emphasized since it's more than half a year that we have been working on it, and obviously with the days counting, because we can see most countries are now still in the lockdown, and obviously they're trying to this time maybe make sure that that the spread goes down. Then the question is what will happen over the next couple of months. That is still kind of like written in the stars. But I think from that point of view, we need to understand how do we run it for the next maybe couple of months, next half year, and how do we then also, after we maybe get out of it towards the back end of next year, understand how can we actually utilize the positive effects of what happened during COVID-19 into the new way of working.
Yeah, I think every organisation has been really provoked into thinking about just how efficient can we be, working in a new way. And every organisation, certainly that I'm speaking to, is seeing new possibilities from this time in terms of ways of working. Whereas before they might have thought, well, no, we need everybody in the office or in a certain location. So the efficiency that's from it is fantastic. But what I'm finding is that people are saying, yeah, I'm saving the commuting time, but they're actually dedicating that time to working as well. Working day has suddenly got very long. You might have been leaving home to get on a train at 6:30 in the morning, and now their desk or working into the evening. So the working day seems to have got longer in many organizations. Is that the case for you as well?
Yeah, we have the same tendency also. And I think here we're trying to, first of all, instill people on we need to exercise also. And we talk a lot about the, you know, when you're out, when you have a conversation, why don't you go for a walk at the same time as you do the talking, which was, I think, fashionable actually in the 90s or in the beginning of the, kind of like during 2000 or something like that. There was a lot of discussions about this walk and talk, and well, now it's the time to do it in that case. So and yes, also when we started this back in March, then we ended up having very long days because, as you said, we exchanged then the commuting time for actually having all of these calls. Also related to that, we're in this new situation that we were not used to trying to get everybody on board and also get things moving to try to kind of like make sure that we didn't lose out from a business perspective. So that also instills a bit of discipline, which we're still in a learning curve of, because obviously you need to make sure that you get your walk, you have your lunch, and that you get up from your desk, maybe even stand up and working for some time. And this is, as I said, this is still early days to get used to that type of working. Most of us have worked for decades and not used to sitting at home all the time as we're doing today.
So during this year, looking back, what do you think you've realized, you know, as a leader that's new or fresh or perhaps reclaimed in some way for yourself or within the organization?
I think it's very important to make sure that you really create an organization that is resilient and agile, because that will help you when there's something happening that you didn't see coming from around the corner. And if you look at it also, nobody really expected a pandemic to close down society. It's interesting because I was listening to an interview with the head of SAS, who was like, no, they didn't have it on their risk chart. And then suddenly you're standing there and all of the planes are grounded, basically. So I think that's key to really make sure that you have that type of culture with agility and resilience and governance, so that you get people with delegated responsibilities and accountability, because then you can act. The worst thing is if you have a centralized organization from that perspective, that you can't really move, because then you really need to have people instilling and going through the chain, basically. I think that's important. And that's important even if it doesn't happen, but it really emphasizes that if you have an agile and resilient organization, you will make it through in a way. The other thing is probably coming out of also that people are adaptable. You can adopt to it. At the same time, obviously, you have the flip back of it. We are social animals in a way. We need a social contact. We need that coffee cup or coffee table discussion. And that I don't think we have really managed yet to see how you can work with it. I mean, we have also tried, like most organizations, to do this type of maybe kind of like a full day of coffee, kind of like a coffee discussions, which means that you can call in at any given moment of time and have discussions with people around the globe. We're trying with obviously quizzes. You know, you start up a meeting with a quiz or you end with a quiz to make it more agile. And also maybe having just these type of just blue sea discussions where you have a meeting where there's really no, maybe you don't have booked anything in your teams, but you're actually open up for discussions around any subject, private or professional, obviously.
That's interesting to hear the experimentation that you're trying there. To be yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that evolves and what actually sticks and what's useful.
Yeah.
And you mentioned about risk there, and of course you're leading on strategy and indeed on finance. I think people's or organizations' risk register look very different going into the future.
Obviously, I mean, earlier you've had these type of outbreaks, or there's been political situations when you got a country being locked down, but not to this extent. So that's something that needs to be planned for. And then again, I mean, then the digitalization aspect comes into it, because obviously the better digitalized you are, the easier, and also not only from a technical point of view, but from a mental point of view, the easier it is to work through these type of situations.
Yeah.
But the social contact is still something that's very hard to replace over a virtual meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The few clients that we've been able to meet with in the times that we've been able to have so relished coming together as a team in a COVID safe way when that has been possible, but it has been a very rare occasion, but really treasured as a result. I think it makes us all realize what we've lost in that way, but we'll reclaim. And is there anything else that you think has been lost during this time, or perhaps is out of sight, because of course we're all very busy managing our own businesses, leading through crisis. And this is a long haul. It's not a sort of short sprint. As you say, it's going to be going into the coming months for sure. Is there anything that's sort of lost or out of focus or out of awareness that we need to call back in to address, because we've all become so COVID focused?
No, I think in our organization, I think we're quite aware of what's going on. And we've been able to manage the business quite well during this period of time because of us being very agile and actually virtual, or in the first place, although this has taken to a new height, obviously. I still think it's the social aspect that we're still doing trial and errors. We're still trying to expand. We're still trying to learn how to cooperate, even if we're not physically present. And also, I think that, after vacation, when people came back, people were looking forward to meeting, and hopefully that it will be, kind of like fading away. But instead, there was a second wave around it. Maybe not so, maybe understandable in a way, but still from a mental point of view, I think a lot of people got a dip, actually, that they lost a bit of energy and that they couldn't see each other. And this still have to learn how to manage.
Looking to 2021, I think organizations certainly are going to be putting mental health firmly on the agenda, from an HR perspective, at least. And it seems to have really accelerated that agenda worldwide, actually. It was already coming on to the table, but this has really brought it sort of really centrally to leadership responsibility and to everybody's self-care responsibility, actually.
And I think that's an important word, the self-care, because we all have a responsibility in this. And there's only so much you can do also from a company point of view into a person's private life. It's important also for the individual themselves to take responsibility for how they can interact going back. Because again, I mean, when you're sitting in with the people or your colleagues you're working with, and you have these restraints, then obviously you need to make sure that you have your private life in balance also. Easier said than done to a certain extent, but that's what we all need to take responsibility over. And then there's a question about, how do you manage your home space? How do you manage your interaction with the rest of the family during a situation like this? How can you make sure that you create that space where you actually can do work from home? And this might be easier in a country where we have bigger living spaces. Obviously, if you're living in a country with small spaces or in a bigger city, this becomes a bit more difficult. But then I think all the more the importance of trying to understand how to take short breaks and really making sure that you take that rest and move the body around, because sitting all the time doesn't work. It doesn't help you really. Exercise is important to keep your mental health in balance.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. It's lovely to see people getting out actually more in nature, and the relationship with nature has definitely taken a step forward for many, is what I'm hearing. And I know I've certainly enjoyed that, and will commit to keeping doing that for the future. And
I come from a country where golf is very much appreciated, and I think the golf courses this summer or this year have been really exploding. It's been full. It's hard to get time on the golf course because everybody's out. And there are big spaces you can move around, obviously.
So that's the business to be in.
Yeah, it's the business to be in, maybe.
So looking to the future, apart from running a golf course, what do you feel optimistic about for the future? Because there have been huge costs in this time, but there are goods also that always come out of adversity in one way, shape or form. And I'm curious, what do you feel optimistic about for the future? What are the gifts that we will take from this time?
I think we will take this understanding of how we can work in a different way, which is both from a private work balance point of view, with how you time it and how you actually move in between office and actually how you travel around the world as well. Because I think that most people can cut their travel down by 50% maybe. And that leads also, if you look into from a sustainability perspective, I think those questions, they have been even more emphasized. I think it's not only because of that those discussions have been going on for a long time. I think they're more visible also now when you're sitting in this pandemic situation, caused by maybe not an accurate way of handling things from the beginning. So that I think is good, because we need to think about how we actually drive the world in a way. And for us also, when you look at Munters that I work for, sustainability is quite intrinsic in our products. So it actually supports our products also, which supports our business. I think that's what we will bring with us, the sustainability impact, as I said, and then also obviously how we plan our private and professional lives to make them work maybe a bit more efficient than what we have done before.
I've had conversations with many leaders where actually they're looking to make their lives and their contribution more meaningful as a result of this time. It's really made them think about, right, what's the purpose of my work and what's the contribution that we're making as an organization to the world. Of course, you know, making money is an important part of the contribution, but not the only contribution.
No, and that's why I think also, you know, when you look at how do you plan your work, whom do you meet physically, whom do you meet virtually, how can you make it better, so you make every minute also when you do meet face to face worthwhile. And as I said, I think a lot of meetings actually that we have met physically, you can actually do them in a virtual environment. But that means also that you really have to plan to make sure that you have these physical meetings also, because they will become even more important than what they have been before. And I think that's also one of the learning curves when you're sitting and starting to work on virtual medias, because then time becomes more, you're more aware of time when you're sitting in a media where you see people, you see yourself actually most of the time, but you also see other people sitting in front of a screen. I think you are more registering on that, which means also you need to think about how you drive those meetings compared to when you do a physical meeting. Because when in physical meetings, you also get that more kind of like, not, there's still purposeful communication obviously, but you get this extra fluff around it that is much harder to get when you do the virtual meetings, which means you need to think about how can you plan virtual meetings, maybe shorter, not do them as long, make sure that there are intervals or pauses, breaks in it, so you actually get people to move around a bit, so they don't become kind of like stiff in mentally, neither mentally nor in their physical stature. So I think those things we're still on the learning curve of doing, and I think we can get out a lot of it if we take this learning curve to its end. But that I will still think that takes a couple of months before we're through with that.
Shorter meetings online definitely work better. And as you say, with breaks in them as well. And it's interesting that in cultures, if you've got a lot of meetings going on, it can often mean that accountabilities aren't sufficiently clear to actually be really getting on with their job, and the measures of those accountabilities being really, really laid out. So I'm always curious when I hear, you know, oh, there's lots of meetings going on here in my organization. Right, well, are the accountabilities sufficiently clear, and are the measures of success within those accountabilities clear? Because that can cut down your meeting culture very, very swiftly. So hearing what you're saying about short, sharp meetings with intervals, I couldn't agree more.
No, and that's also interesting, as you said. I mean, I've been in my job for more than 1 year, so during those months when COVID, kind of like pre-COVID situation, it was a learning curve for me to get into the organization and meet people. And when this hit us then mid-March, I haven't met all people still. So there's a learning curve. How do you address and how do you get to know people when you haven't met before? And I can also see now when we're hiring new people and we're onboarding them, the difficulty, because that's where the physical meeting is very important to make.
Yeah, I was working with a team last week actually, and they met each other for the first time in the room, several of them. And one of the comments was, you know, oh gosh, I didn't realize you were that tall. Because you get no sense of height and proportion really when you're on a video call. So yeah, there's a lot that gets missed.
At the same time, obviously you can look at it from a generation aspect also, because if you look at the people around kind of like 20 years today, they're more used to a virtual environment than what I mean, I'm 55 than what I am. So it's maybe more of a learning curve for me than a person who comes in which is around their 20s or around their 20s, because they have been utilizing the medias from an earlier age than what I have.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely spot on. Yeah, I get that completely. I mean, I have a 17-year-old son, and he's you know online with his friends globally. They never meet. they never meet in person. So yeah, it's a good education for us in our 50s, Annette.
Yeah, no. So I think a lot of it is actually us getting used to a new media
Yes,
that we haven't
yes.
operated
Yeah,
that
so
much
it's
before.
great
Yeah.
provocation for us to learn.
Yeah.
So looking to the future,
Mm.
how has this time forever changed your leadership for the future?
I'm still in the beginning of it, because I'm still in the phase of, how do you address that gap that is being created that we don't meet socially. At the end of the day, when you look at leadership, it's about making sure that you have the right people on board, obviously, making sure that we have kind of like set the scope for each individual person's activity, and then manage around those scope, work a lot with performance measurement measures, make sure that we run, based on target setting rather than controlling activities. But that I've done before, so I don't see the real change there. For me, the real change is really, how do I figure out the social distancing or bridging the social distancing that occurs due to not being able to meet physically. And that's where, again, I think that is really to take a pause to think about, what are the meetings that I really need to meet people physically, and what can I do virtually? Because that has to roll in once we get through this, maybe this lockdown periods, or kind of like the social interaction period.
Yeah.
And then stay close to, I think the most important thing is really to stay close. And when you're in an office, then you don't think about it, because you're obviously close there as you see each other, and you pop in your head into the doorway and ask some questions. That's what one has to figure out now to do in a virtual situation.
Yes, yes. It's interesting because there are other leaders that I've spoken with that equally are finding their way, connection in this environment. And it's also interesting to reflect on, is it actually just about connection in this environment, or is it about connection with people as well? Because another leader was reflecting to me, actually, I realized I had worked with this person for many years and I didn't know their children's names. I didn't actually know about their career background. There have been conversations that have been provoked by this time, where people have declared things about their family setup or their health that would not have perhaps been volunteered in conversation, but have been necessary conversations during this time. And for me, I think one of the gifts is it has created a level of connection and intimacy in those relationships, which is a blessing and can be preserved, but it needs to be sought out and inquired about, not just when we're in crisis and somebody needs to declare a health concern, for example. So
I think those things happen in time, as you said, crisis, but obviously where the borderline between your private life and your professional life becomes so much thinner, because you're actually sitting at home, working from home, at the same time as you might be in a situation that your whole family is at home as well. That creates usually a lot of kind of like frustration inside of the family, but then on how to manage that vis-a-vis with the company that you work for becomes more obvious.
yeah.
So I would say that certain people have to do it. At the same time, also what we have done in our company is to say that obviously those people that don't need to work in the office, they should work from home, because that also supports the people that cannot work from home, that really needs to be in the office. And with that, the way that we have worked has also sorted out some of those issues, because then I mean, there are certain teams where you have some individuals that really need to be in the office to work. Obviously they can be there if the rest are not there, because then you create the space for them to operate on. And I think that's important to understand, the individual situations you can manage, who goes in and who doesn't go, and then usually it solves itself a little bit also after a while. But then again, and then also that's one of the aspects. The other aspect is obviously this, as I said, everybody needs to take a responsibility in this, both from a private point of view and obviously the leaders from a leadership point of view. But everybody has a say in how to move it forward. And I think that, as I said, we took for granted certain things. When you walked into your office, you saw somebody, maybe you didn't have to put that many things in words. You understood the person, but now you have to put more words to it. And then also connected, I really try to understand, to take that time out when you actually walk out, when you have lunch, when you have so that you don't book everything, which I also have found very difficult during a period of time that I ended up being booked from 7:30 in the morning to 8 o'clock in the evening, basically, and no break. which led to that, when you when you left the home office, you have maybe been walking 200 steps or something like that, which is way too few. So I think it's the discipline as an individual one has to apply also, or try to apply. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. No, it requires us all to sort of think afresh.
Yeah.
Look at what's healthy and productive for ourselves personally and professionally.
So and those questions that I think at least popped up for me during this time is obviously something that has to be progressed and thought through. How can I use it after we're out of this? In any moment of crisis, there are always things that you can learn that you can actually use to move things forward afterwards also.
Yeah. And organizations will clearly be making new choices about what's possible for the organization. And I think many individuals will be making new choices for their lives.
Yeah.
And bringing a different quality of conversation to the organization, therefore, about what's possible for them to balance their lives alongside what they need to contribute to the organization. So it'll be interesting to see how things unfold. Exciting times ahead for sure.
Oh, you should come back next year and see how that's working out. Maybe you need to do a follow-up.
Maybe. Good idea, yeah. The value of hindsight.
Yes.
Well, one thing's for sure, this time last year, none of us would have predicted we'd have been where we are today. I know you're in charge of strategy, and somebody said to me that anybody that did a sort of 5-year plan a couple of years ago was wrong. So who knows what 2021 will bring for us. For sure that there's been some huge challenges this year, but equally some give and a level of acceleration.
Yeah, but that's why I think also, as you said, when you look at what have one really learned, and then you're coming back to also things will happen that you didn't expect. Yeah. That's why you always need to work with the agility and the resilience of an organization, with governance, with the people, because when things happen, then everybody needs to work, and you need to sort of have that kind of like culture in the company that you can move forward, not on the basis on giving directives all the time, but actually that you have an understanding of how you drive the company forward so you can push the right buttons.
Yeah. Annette, thank you so much for joining me today at the Leadership Exchange. And if you'd like to see more interviews with more leaders globally, then please keep an eye on my postings. I'm talking to many leaders over these weeks and months to share learnings. And if you'd like to contribute, then drop a note in comments and I'll be in touch. But for today, Annette, can I say a huge thank you for sharing your reflections. It's been a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you.
Happy to be here, and thanks for the invite. Much appreciated.
Bye-bye.
Bye.